Have you ever wondered why your mental clarity, your sleep quality, and honestly, even your biological age might actually be dictated by just one totally overlooked daily habit? Welcome to this explainer. We're about to plunge deep into the science of the gut-brain connection. We'll be exploring how our neurobiological relationship with food basically acts as the master switch for our cognitive performance and our lifelong vitality. It's fascinating stuff, so let's dive right in.
Now take a look at this number, 20. This right here represents a really profound biological paradox in our evolutionary wiring. You see, it takes our brain 20 full minutes to realize our stomach is actually full. Think about that. When we eat, stretch receptors in the gut are firing signals all the way up the vagus nerve to the brain. But this ancient system, well, it's pretty slow. In our modern, hyper-fast world, eating quickly means you completely bypass your body's built-in satisfaction signals. You're leaving yourself biologically blind to your own fullness. To get a handle on this, we're going to map out a journey straight from foundational neuroscience right into actionable psychology. We'll be covering the mindless eating epidemic, the gut-brain axis, hedonic versus homeostatic hunger, the hunger-fullness scale, clinical mindfulness, and finally the 5S protocol.
All right, starting off with Section 1, the mindless eating epidemic.
We are facing this massive crisis of attention fragmentation right now, and it fundamentally disrupts our biology. The average American spends 2.5 hours a day eating, but get this, over half that time is completely distracted by screens, driving, or working. We've literally severed the sensory connection to our food. And that distraction, it's incredibly dangerous. Eating while stressed or doom scrolling activates your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response. When that happens, blood flow is literally diverted away from your GI tract, your digestive enzymes get suppressed, your body simply cannot absorb nutrients or trigger satiety when it thinks it's under threat. This chronic, low-grade stress response while we eat accelerates cellular inflammation, and it directly impairs your micromental health.
Which brings us seamlessly to Section 2, the gut-brain axis.
You see, digestion is definitely not just some mechanical process happening in your stomach. It's this incredibly complex, bidirectional highway of hormonal and electrical signals that is constantly governing your central nervous system. We are basically driven by two critical chemical messengers here. First, there's ghrelin, the hunger hormone. This is secreted by an empty stomach to stimulate your appetite. And on the flip side, we have leptin, the satiety hormone, which signals your brain to stop eating. But remember that 20-minute delay we just talked about? When we eat mindlessly, we completely outpace these hormones. We are entirely crushing our own metabolic balance.
This hormonal mismatch leads us right into Section 3, hedonic versus homeostatic hunger.
To actually fix our eating habits, we first have to understand how our modern environments are actively hijacking our brain circuitry. Let's break it down. Homeostatic hunger is your true biological need for fuel. It builds up slowly, and it's highly flexible about what you eat. Hedonic hunger, on the other hand, is purely psychological. It strikes urgently, it's driven by the brain's dopamine reward pathways, basically screaming out for comfort from ultra-processed, calorie-dense foods. More often than not, hedonic hunger is actually a false signal. It's a reaction to sleep deprivation, anxiety, or even just boredom, masquerading as physical hunger.
So, how do we recalibrate those false signals? That's what we'll cover in Section 4, the hunger-fullness scale.
This scale is a primary clinical interoceptive tool designed to rebuild our biological awareness. Leading global health institutions like Alberta Health Services and Queensland Health utilize these exact scales to force a total paradigm shift. The goal here is that we absolutely must abandon those rigid stress-inducing diet rules. Instead, we need to relearn the forgotten language of our own internal bodily cues.
The Denver Health version of the scale provides this really clear, optimal eating zone. Ideally, you want to start eating at a 3 or a 4. That's when you feel a strong, clear sense of hunger. And then you want to stop at around a 6 when you feel comfortably satisfied. Now here's the catch. If you wait to eat until you're at a 1 or a 2, when you're absolutely starving and feeling dizzy, your prefrontal cortex essentially shuts down. Your reptilian brain just takes over, which almost guarantees a binge. Now, looking at the upper end of the spectrum, the satiety scale warns us about the danger zone of hitting a 9 or a 10. Eating until you are literally stuffed is an emotional override, plain and simple. And overeaten to this extreme doesn't just cause you a bit of guilt, it actively disrupts your circadian rhythm and your deep sleep architecture. It triggers cellular inflammation and cortisol spikes that, quite frankly, prematurely age your body. Not what we want, right?
All right, moving to the practical side. In Section 5, Clinical Mindfulness and the Raisin Meditation.
So how do we actually practice this in the real world? Well, the raisin meditation is a foundational sensory exercise used in clinical therapy to completely disrupt our automatic, zombie-like eating patterns. The exercise kicks off with the seeing phase. Basically, you take a single raisin and you examine it as if you're an alien who just landed on Earth and has never seen this thing before. Now yeah, you might feel a little bit silly staring intensely at a wrinkled piece of fruit, but commanding absolute visual attention pulls you right out of your anxious, worrying mind and forces your nervous system entirely into the present moment.
From there, you follow a really precise sequence. You hold it to feel its weight. You touch it for texture. You smell it to trigger your salivary glands. And finally, you taste it without actually chewing yet. You then slowly swallow and follow the sensation. This extreme deceleration does something incredible. First, it allows that 20-minute hormonal satiety delay to finally catch up. But even more importantly, it exploits neuroplasticity. It actually down-regulates those hyperactive dopamine networks in your brain that drive impulsive eating in the first place.
Let's apply that clinical focus to everyday life. In our final section, Section 6, the 5S Protocol.
Dr. Susan Albers developed this highly actionable daily framework to combat hedonic hunger and seamlessly integrate mindful eating into our crazy, fast-paced modern environments. Let's break down these 5 S's. First, sit. Believe it or not, eating while walking increases how much you consume by about 5% just due to distraction. Second, slowly chew. Surprisingly, if you eat with your non-dominant hand, you can reduce the volume you eat by up to 30%. It's wild. Third, savor. Turn off those screens. Fourth, simplify. Just keep processed foods out of sight entirely. And finally, smile. I know it sounds a bit overly simple, but smiling actually creates a micro-pause between bites. It triggers a tiny release of serotonin, which instantly lowers your stress baseline.
Now, if you're skeptical, the hard data proves this isn't just some soft philosophy. Clinical programs actually show a 40% reduction in craving-related eating when applying these methods. Across multiple studies, mindful eating decreases binge episodes, it lowers anxiety, and it actually stabilizes fasting glucose levels over a 12-month period. Think about the interconnected systems here. You aren't just changing a habit, you are literally structurally rewiring your brain and extending your health span.
John Kabat-Zinn really hit the nail on the head when he said, when we taste with attention, even the simplest foods provide a universe of sensory experience. Shifting your mindset from rigid, punishing restriction to active, engaged presence completely transforms your gut, it protects your brain, and it redefines your longevity. So the next time you sit down to eat, I want you to ask yourself a question. Are you just stuffing down the stress of your day, or are you finally ready to truly nourish your biology?